We're here to talk about equality. We're here to talk about why our equality is on trial. We are called Wait No More NYC, and we have enlisted these wonderful professional actors. We've brought you this testimony because it was not allowed to be televised, and it should be heard. We've brought you this testimony because although Prop 8 was declared unconstitutional on August 4th, it is currently on appeal. We've brought you this testimony because gay marriage is not legal here in New York.
So, Dr. Myer, can you define what you mean by stigma as you use that word?
The most succinct, I suggest, description would be that a group in a society has some kind of attribute that has been identified to be a negative attribute, that is seen as negative by society. And because of having this attribute, they are therefore what we call devalued. So, in the example of gay sexual orientation is identified as such an attribute that people perceive as being a negative attribute. Therefore, gay and lesbian people, the whole person is identified by that identity that is devalued. The whole person is devalued because of that relationship, and stigma, of course, has been applied to many other populations and instances.
Are you familiar with a concept referred to as structural stigma?
Yes.
What is structural stigma?
Structural stigma refers to, in a sense, the origins of the stigma and the mechanism that maintain and enact stigma. By the word structural, we mean to more solid structures in society. Societal institutions such as, of course, the law, being as important one, and any other institution that is essential in our society.
Explain a little more, if you would, for the court, the way that laws can play a role in structural stigma.
Well, laws have a major role in determining access of the citizen to different, we call it goods that society can provide to resources, I guess would be the word. And laws may block or foster access to such resources. In that sense, they control the access that various groups may have to a particular institution. So, of course, here we're talking about marriage, and of course, the law has a role in determining who can access that institution.
So once a structural stigma is in place, how does it affect people?
People want to achieve certain goals that we all view as important goals in our lives, such as career and marriage being two important examples of that. And stigma would, as I said, determine the access that people have to those desired goals, to achieving those desired goals.
And has the research found that there are stigmas associated with gay men and lesbians?
Yes, of course.
And what are some examples of such stigma?
There are really many stigmas and stereotypes that describe kind of how people are perceived. In my work, I have written about the role of intimate relationships and the way intimate relationships have been portrayed. And part of the stereotype that is part of the stigma, the negative attitude or the negative associations with this group, has been for many years that gay people are incapable of relationships, of intimate relationships. They may be undesiring even of intimate relationships, and that certainly they are not successful at having intimate relationships. And when I said this has been a kind of social stigma, I'm talking about how it has been portrayed in various cultural outlets, as well as in more organized way in various social interactions, social institutions.
Now you use the phrase intimate relationships. What do you mean by that?
Intimate relationships mean that relationships that people have. Of course, primary among them would be something like a marriage, a husband and a wife. but also other intimate relationships with one's family, one's children, and one's community. And in all of those, again, as people have been described for many years as social isolates, as unconnected, as not as good citizens, in a sense, who partake in society the same way that everybody else, as a pariah, so to speak. So that's what stigma does. And in particular, for gay and lesbian example, I think the issue of intimate relationship, because of the nature of what being gay is about, who you choose to be with, that has been a strong source of stigma.
Dr. Myer, if you could turn in your binder to Plaintiff's Exhibit 1011, please.
Yes.
And this is one of the documents that you've relied on in forming your opinions?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 1011?
This is a chapter from a book that I have relied on and that I've used in teaching as an example of, maybe I should say what the book is. So, this is a chapter from a book that was published in the 60s, late 60s, and was very, very popular book. It was called Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. It was very, very, very popular. It was published in many... Well, I have a hardcover edition that is the 17th edition of this book, that was published in 1969, and I personally remember that book. So in this book, there are different chapters that aim to educate the public about different issues concerning sexuality. And this particular chapter is concerning male homosexuality.
And this is a book that had wide distribution?
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you about this, but what I would like to do is just read the text into the record so it's clear what we are addressing.
May I explain something about this?
Of course.
I'm sorry. So the book is written in a question and answer format. And basically, the author goes through explaining sexual issues as if there is a question that somebody is asking him about his opinion about various sexual issues. And then he provides the answer. So this is an excerpt of one of those question and answers.
Okay. So the question posed is, what about all the homosexuals who live together happily for years? And the answer is, what about them? They are mighty rare birds among the homosexual flock. Moreover, the happy part remains to be seen. The bitterest argument between a husband and wife is a passionate love sonnet by comparison with the dialogue between a butch and his queen. Live together? Yes. Happily? Hardly. Is this the text from this book an example of the stigma that you're talking about?
Yes. I think this is a very dramatic experience of what I was referring to, where, in this case, an educational book portrays the relationship between gay men as with great disrespect. I would say ridicule and contempt.
And at what stage in life does stigma begin to affect gay men and lesbians?
Stigma really affects all people in society because it is a social norm, if you will. It is something that we all in society learn from a very young age. This particular stigma affects gay men and lesbians in a particular way because it is about something that is very pertinent to how they think about who they are. In my mind, this kind of stigma on another stereotypes are very impactful, especially at the younger age, and in particular in the time of life where gay men and lesbians, usually during youth, either realize or recognize or know that they're gay, and begin to try to understand what that means to them. And of course, the most available reference that they would have is this kind of thing that they have learned over the lifetime, over the childhood, socialization, that we all have been exposed to. So it affects everybody, but certainly it affects in a very strong way somebody who is maybe coming out and realizing that he or she is gay, and that's what they might believe is what is in line for them.
Now, Dr. Myer, you live in New York, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Are you familiar with Proposition 8, the ballot initiative that was passed in California?
Yes, I am.
And what's your basic understanding of what Proposition 8 did?
Well, Proposition 8 was a proposition that was voted by voters in California, restricted marriage to a man and a woman, and in fact excluding gay men and lesbians from marriage. And it was a constitutional amendment to the California Constitution.
In your view, based on your work in this field, is Proposition 8 a form of structural stigma?
Yes, absolutely. In a very simple way. You can think of it as a block or a gate toward a particular institution, toward attaining a particular goal. So in that sense, it is very much fitting in the definition of structural stigma.
And in what ways does Prop 8 impose structural stigma on gay men and lesbians in California?
Well, it imposes by the fact that it denies them access to the institution of marriage. As I said, people in our society have goals that they are cherished by all people. Again, that's part of social conventions, that we all grow up raised to think that there are certain things that we want to achieve in life. And in this case, this Proposition 8 is in fact says that if you are gay or lesbian, you cannot achieve this particular goal.
Now, are you aware that in California, gay and lesbian couples can register as a domestic partnership?
Yes, I am.
And in your view, does that eliminate the structural stigma of Prop 8?
No.
And why not?
What I am talking about throughout my work and today is really about the symbolic meaning, the social meaning of marriage. It is, I think, quite clear that the young children do not aspire to be domestic partners. But certainly the word marriage is something that many people aspire to. Doesn't mean that everybody achieves that, but at least I would say it is a very common, socially approved goal for children as they think about their future and for people as they develop relationships. For young people, and certainly for people later on, this is a desirable and respected type of goal that if you attain it, it's something that gives you pride and respect.
And do you have an opinion as to whether domestic partnerships enjoy similar symbolic and social meaning?
I have an opinion. And that is that, as I said, I don't think it has the same social meaning. In fact, I don't know if it has any social meaning.